The caterhamracer.com Academy Championship is sponsored by just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. So, ladies and gents, this is it. The final racing of Season 2, and even in practice, qualifying, they're going off the road and can't keep it on the black stuff. But here we are for the season finale of Season 2 of the caterhamracer.com Academy Championship. This is where it all comes to a close, and we've been following the amended calendar we've had this year for Caterham Motorsport in real life. So it brings us here once again to the virtual representation of Norfolk and the Snetterton 300 circuit. We go into the evening where as many as 5 drivers could potentially still win the championship on drop scores. It's everything to play for with these last 2 races. 2 15-minute sprints to decide who walks away with the first championship. The season 1 was just a series in lockdown. So the cars are in the middle of qualifying at the moment. Of course, race is coming up very shortly. It's Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson back in the commentary box once again. And once again, Chris, we had finals day at the 420Rs here this time last week, and that was pretty tense with all sorts going on. And I noticed when you're describing this evening's action on Facebook, you said join us for the carnage. Are you really expecting it not to be that clean as it was in 420Rs?
We had a practice start just before we started the broadcast. We had a little practice start of a race, and it all went far too well, Scott. So I think they've used up their good luck so far. But that's me being cynical, and then I'm always happily surprised when they actually bring it out of the bag. We've seen some great stuff from the Academy cars, and the last time out I think was probably some of the best racing yet. So I am really hopeful and really looking forward to the night's racing ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you did give them a stern warning on Discord saying that have a great race, but please don't hit each other. And if you do make contact, you have to wait for each other. But apart from that, enjoy yourselves, but just don't crash. Basically, that was the final message, wasn't it? Sometimes it's like shouting into the wind, but I still do it nonetheless, in the vain hope that someone might listen to me one day. I'm sure they will one day. I know I love you really, but at the same time, as you well know, they're all racing drivers deep down, so they all want to win. So unfortunately, sometimes logic and common sense goes out the window being a racing driver. They always say that part of the racing driver's brain that senses fear and common sense. It's pretty much that goes. The racing drivers don't appear to have it, or they claim not to have it because they can't keep it on the track or keep out of each other's way. Well, let's go back to the championship fight then. Let's look at the championship points coming into the weekend. Now, of course, we've got 2 sets of the table, 2 versions of the table to show you. Now, this is how it looks on total scores. This is not how it will decide the championship, but on total points scored, it is even between David Rowe and Jaroslav Cerny. James Murphy is 3rd. Blair McConaughey is as high as 4th, only a point ahead of Will Rossetti. Then it's Richard Gallagher, Steve McMaster, Christian Deruta, Steve Barnell and Guy Crawford, with a total of 35 drivers having raced across the season, and for them we say a massive thank you. Now here's where it gets tricky. Now we go into drop scores, and this is where it all changes, because now when you switch it around after the drivers drop their worst 2 scores, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
That's correct, yeah.
But now with 2 scores dropped, this is now how it looks, because Jaroslav Cerny now holds a slender 4-point lead over David Rowe. But James Murphy can also make some inroads here, as he's 14 points off, but he can certainly take a lot of points away if results go his way. And also James has got a smaller amounts of points to drop, so therefore he kind of already knows how many points he's dropping anyway. Steve McMaster is 4th, only a point ahead of Christian Deruta. So the top 5 are currently separated on drop scores by 24 points. That means, Chris, literally between those 5, as I mentioned at the start, it is everything to play for, and we know how messy and how dramatic it got with the 420Rs. With the Academy, there's almost no telling, is there?
No, that's right. And as you kind of mentioned, different drivers, because of the way the drop score system works, are going to start scoring points sort of lower down the order. So Christian and Steve McMaster, who have missed events, and the same with James Murphy, they will start scoring points almost immediately. So those gaps which look wide now will close up quickly. And with 2 races and therefore 2 sets of 35 points up for grabs for the winners, these things can change around pretty quickly. And I don't think we're going to know what's the result until sort of after the finishing line and after we've been able to process those results.
The key thing is, we'll get to qualifying in terms of who's where at the moment, because of course that will play out in the background. But looking at who scored what, you're absolutely right. There are 2 drivers in that top 5 who have missed a round and therefore don't exactly have any points to drop. Which is Steve McMaster, because he missed the 2 races at Capital Park, so he doesn't need to drop anything. Every single point he will score makes it count. Same with Christian Deruta. He missed the last round that took place at Brands Hatch, which means Donington Park, forgive me. So it means now that either one of them don't have any points to drop. The trouble with that is, on the downside, is they can't afford bad results tonight. They need all the points they can get, because they know that if they have a bad result, and ultimately if they non-finish or have a drop or have a poor result, that's it. Whatever points they score from those races is what they will stay with. They can't drop those points. They've already missed the 2 races from the round that the weekend that they were scheduled to race, didn't race at. So McMaster being Cadwell Park and then Cerny being Donington. So therefore, Chris, for them, it's even more critical in some cases than the top 3, because Cerny, Rowe and Murphy have got points to fall back on. Not so much many for James Murphy, whereas Cerny and Rowe seem to have more of that sort of cushion. But McMaster and Zaruta, if they want to have a chance of winning this, they have to perform, because they know they haven't got points to drop. But it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because, again, as I said, if they screw up tonight, that's it. Even in one race, that could be their title over.
Yeah, they have got no margin for error now at all. And, round Snetterton, you've got to almost be a little bit aggressive to sort of make your move. The straights are so long and the corners are technical, so there's always the chance that there will be accidents, and we saw it in the 420s last week. We saw that contact being made, and that can really did upset McMaster's race evening. And had that close, scores been closer, that would have been him out of the championship charge. So that all these people, all the drivers are going to be balancing off that. You want to make that move, you want to get that extra point because they're all vital, but equally you don't want to lose and ruin your whole race for the.
Well, let's look at qualifying then. We've got just about 6 3/4 minutes to go, almost 6.5 minutes in this final qualifying session of the season. We're looking at James Murphy, who is currently sat in 4th, and as you kind of expected, 4 of the top 5 are up there in the top 5 places. We've got Cerny on provisional pole by 1/10.5, with Zaruta in 2nd place, and it's David Rowe and James Murphy. There is Jaroslav Cerny, the Czech driver, one of the two people that have been helping us develop these Caterham race cars, both the Academy and the 420R machines, all the way through the first 2 seasons that we've had. Of course, Cerny's been working away with the physics and the driving dynamics of these cars, so effectively he knows how these cars handle better than arguably anyone else on the grid. And of course, the majority of these drivers here have all raced and driven Caterhams in real life, so he knows more about these models arguably than anyone else. And also, we have to give a shout out not just to him, but also to Bonobro, who has been continuously putting in work in the skins for our new drivers and improving the graphics on these cars. So ultimately, these two have been the backbone in terms of the technical side of things, in terms of the cars. And so it's quite key that we've had them both on board for this season and the previous season that we had, because it means that all the feedback which these drivers are giving means it's making these cars, hopefully, fingers crossed, better and more realistic and much more authentic to drive compared to what these guys will be racing in real life, particularly those who are in competition this coming weekend, this coming Saturday, for the main championship finals for Caterham at Snetterton for Road Sport 273 10s and the 7 UK Championship.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to watching those races live this weekend as well. Like you say, it's been great. Just on the sort of subject of cars and car modelling, we hopefully have some really exciting news coming in the off season. So obviously tonight represents the end of the season 2 of our academy sort of and the 420s. But next year we're hoping for even more and bigger and better. I say next year. we haven't quite decided on the starting date, so what we're encouraging people to do is go to caterhamracer.com, sign up for our mailing list, get liking our Facebook page, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest information. And as soon as that information comes out, you'll then be first to know. Whether you're a driver who wants to come and join in with all this, if this looks good fun and you think you can challenge these top Caterham racers, then get involved. Or if you're just a viewer who enjoys the action that we put on, if you come to caterhamracer.com and get subscribed and signed up, and then you'll know exactly when and what's going to happen with season 3.
I suspect with all the drivers that we had come in with the sims they were picking up and the e-racing they were doing, of course, during the main lockdown period that we had earlier on in the year, I suspect there were some that will want to dust those off for the winter period, and provided that everything happens between sort of now and just the beginning of the next season of Caterham Motorsport, they want to keep their hand in and keep themselves suitably prepared. So as Chris rightly said, keep your eyes on caterhamracer.com, subscribe to their mailing list, and do keep up to date with everything, all the developments, and of course when sign-ups will be available, and of course what the plans are going to be for season 3. Now, I've noticed for qualifying we had Steve McMaster, who's one of the last cars to put a lap in. We've got, again, just to note as well, you can see slightly bigger grid than normal. We managed to fit in 21 cars for tonight's season finale, because of course with how many people that we had qualify. Usually we have a top 18, but then if we did that on regular form, we'd have had 3 cars racing on the road in Grid B, which we can't have because that's not fair. So 21 cars for tonight. Everyone who set a time on the server is in almost. I think we've got one that is missing tonight, but everyone else, the rest of the 21 cars we've got all on the grid together for one big grid once again. So Steve McMaster doesn't appear to be on exactly the same pace as his 4 championship rivals around him. He's the slowest of the 5 right now by just over 5.5 tenths. It's Cerny who has increased his pole margin by about another tenth of a second since we last looked at the timings being whilst we've been talking. He's now almost a quarter of a second ahead with Zaruta alongside him on the front row provisionally. Then the 2 DPR drivers, Rowe and Murphy, and the McMaster, as we say, just over 5.5 tenths away. So that might look like quite a margin, I suppose, in many cases, Chris, looking at the qualifying order. But in terms of then when you then think that they're all 5 of them going to be together, if they manage to pull away into one big pack, not only is it going to be a fantastic spectacle watching the 5 championship contenders all scrapping amongst themselves in one large quintet, but at the same time, they're all arguably in race pace, I'm sure, will be just as quick as each other. So they'll either be holding each other up or pulling each other along, or whichever order it's going to be. So qualifying, as we know, for some drivers, isn't the whole story. How they perform in the race and how they work in a pack together, if they find themselves in one big group, that's going to be the key, particularly on a straight circuit like Snetterton, with these long straights, a great opportunity for slipstreaming, big braking zones into corners like Brundle and Nelson, faster corners like Ritchie's, corners like Wilson, Agostini hairpin. It's not only a great place for overtaking on the straights, but it's overtaking central in the corners as well. So the racing is all important. It's not just the qualifying being the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, and I think McMaster would be the first person to say that his pace in the academy is not the same as his pace in the 420. He just understands the 420 car a little bit better and is able to extract those last few tenths, where in the academy car he struggles a little more. But that he's still got we've seen cars there. That is a good opportunity to highlight that there is a glitch in the track just outside of that bombhole corner, and it can send cars all sorts of directions when they're really pushing and going out wide. But yeah, he can't quite find the pace. But nevertheless, racecraft counts for a lot, especially around a technical track like this. And yes, we will see him, I think, still continue to be, an imposing force at the front of that race. Nevertheless, it's always nice to have that extra pace in the bag. And we've seen Murphy now take pole position with a 14.6. That's one of the fastest laps we've seen on all week. So that's a really good stake in the ground for James Murphy, wanting to pull out ahead of everyone.
There's a couple of drivers mowing the grass. I'm not sure Palm will appreciate that or praise them for it, given these staff bit of an extra less job in the virtual world. But nonetheless, as you mentioned, you're rightfully so, James Murphy has popped to the top. There he is. 2 minutes 14.692. I know that there was a point in the server, there was a screenshot David Rowe took where James had beaten Rowe's time by about a tenth, and he said, "Oh, come on, James, stop it now, please," because it's just been quicker. So it's team boss being beaten by one of his drivers as we now move into the final few seconds of qualifying. Only 25 to go, and just consistency of James's. Look at that, 2 minutes 14.7 on that. He was only about 300ths of a second off.
And look how close Cerny is.
He looks like he's in really good form tonight.
Yeah, and look how close Cerny is behind. There's nothing in it. There's half a tenth is all that sort of separates them, and they've both been hammer and tongs at that between themselves. I think I mentioned before the broadcast again, Scott, that anything inside the 14-second bracket is a great lap, and so to do a 14.6 is that's really rapid.
Yeah, and we wouldn't expect anything less from guys, particularly like Murphy and Zaruta, who of course have raced and won in Caterham before. Murphy's of course champion in road sports. That's a story for another day. But in many cases, there's no surprise these guys are quick. Again, Cerny knows the physics of these cars, and these cars in particular, inside out, better than the back of his hand. David Rowe's been driving lap after lap in the DPR simulator. Steve, of course, has been putting in plenty of laps and mileage as well. So. And he's also someone who's a regular. I think he's a regular Caterham racer himself, but just not with Caterham Motorsport. So the 5 of them know Caterhams in one way or another, pretty much very intimately between themselves, not just in real life, but now in the sim as well, which is advantageous. Cerny's going to come across the line. Can he improve on his final lap time? The answer is no. He's off by 4.5 tenths. So it looks like he's resided to a spot on the front row of the grid, which you won't be too displeased about, but of course with the run down towards Ritchie's and then the fight afterwards, which will be all important. The last few drivers just coming round to complete their last few flying laps, one of them being I thought one of them was Christian Zaruta, but he's diving into the pit lane. Chris Skillicorn's going past the pits. We've also got coming in, looks like Will Rossetti. A good effort from him for 6th position. There goes Steve McMaster. Now he's looking to try and improve if he can. He's 6/10 off pole position. Is there going to be anything left in this final effort? Getting closer? The answer is no, not quite. He will stay 6th and no improvement. So
Chris Skillicorn did pop up to 5th place there, though, on that last lap. A great effort, just half a second off of pole position. Brilliant stuff.
Good spot. Yeah, absolutely. Chris Skillicorn, this year's Academy Green Group vice champion. Of course, he was beaten to the title by Tom Cockrell. Good to see him in the mix, and he'll be in action, actually. We'll tell you about that in a little bit. He'll be in action this weekend in something a little bit different to the rest of the weekend coming up. So, James Murphy then picks up pole position for our first of 2 races for our season finale of Season 2 of the Caterham Racer Academy Championship. He will start alongside Czech Republic's Jaroslav Cerny, the points leader on drop scores by 4. And he will look to try and maintain his advantage if he can. Christian Zaruta is on the 2nd row of the grid in the Brawn GP Special. Alongside him, David Rowe, 2nd in the points, 4 behind the leader on drop scores. Can he do anything about it from that 2nd row of the grid? Then Chris Skillicorn with a great final effort to put him 5th on the grid ahead of Steve McMaster, the 5th and final championship contender. Then it's Will Rossetti and Steve Varnell, followed by Paul Fernerhuff and Blair McConaughey. 10 very strong drivers. That's arguably, I'd say, probably the 10 strongest drivers on the grid, all in that top 10 placings. Then it's Tim Van Heer 11th, Richard Gallagher 12th, who was quick in practice but couldn't quite match it in qualifying tonight. Emma Jaselink, another Belgian driver, is ahead of Andrew Parker. Then it's James Fowler and Tom McEwing, one of next year's Academy racers. Mark Rodman and Jim Erland come next from Michael Coomber and Alan Curtis. And then right at the back of the grid in 21st, last but absolutely not least, we have our 22 cars. We've got Philip Clarke and Mike Hilton. We were also set to possibly have Daniel Mitchell, but he is unavailable. So 22 cars taking the start tonight across 11 rows of Caterhams. So, I guess apart from us, the sort of time for talking on this is over, because it's now time to get down to the business end of this championship. We have a title to settle. 5 drivers between them have to move their way through the bun fight that's going to be these 2 15-minute races and decide who's it going to be. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction in terms of who's going to win the championship, but how do you potentially see this playing out between these 5 guys at the front? They're all around each other. You've got a couple of drivers in the mix like Rossetti, Blair McConaughey's in the mix as well in there too, Chris Skillicorn. They could be catalysts in the mix if they can keep up with the leaders. How are you expecting, if you can fathom it at all, how are you expecting tonight to play out between these 2 races?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one to call, Scott. I mean, I'm hoping that certainly in this first race they will, discretion the better part of valor and just make those battles last, because there's no point them spinning out. There's not all to lose in this first race. They can gain all that position and places. Especially the guys that are kind of on that edge. They don't have any points that they can drop and things like that. I predict that it's going to be more of the same. I can't imagine that they're going to be doing anything other than going flat out. Again, they're drivers, aren't they, Scott? I would still call Murphy has got a slight pace advantage, but Cerny was right back up there in qualifying, which is great to see. And really, this is going to, it's great to see the top 4 playing out at the front of the grid here.
Yeah, and as I mentioned with McMaster and Zaruta, I mean, arguably Murphy can't afford bad races, because arguably the only points he's dropping at the moment are 2 amounts of 17 points that he picked up from Cabwell. So that's a crucial thing for him. He's right at the sharp end of the group where he needs to be. The pace is there, but he knows Cerny's just as quick, as are the guys behind him. But we're going to find out how this all plays out in just a few moments. The red lights are on. We're about to settle possibly the first half of the championship evening, as the first race of Snetterton for the final rounds of the Season 2 of caterhamracer.com Academy Championship are underway. Again, nice, clean, even start from everyone so far as they run down towards turn 1. I stress the word so far because it all could kick off in a moment. We head down towards Redgate Corner for the first time. Sorry, Richie's Corner for the first time, forgive me, wrong circuit. And it's now side by side between the 2 front row men. Cerny has his nose in front down towards Wilson Hairpin for the first time. Rowe's defending from, looks like, Zaruta, as he managed to put the car in the middle of the road. Also getting up into there looks to be Chris Skillicorn. Steve McMaster's getting caught in the pack. Hopefully not too much like he was last time. It's from a spin out in both races and somehow still win the 420R title. But now into Palmer for the first time, and Cerny leads. It's then Murphy 2nd, followed by Rowe in 3rd place, Zaruta 4th, Skillicorn 5th, McMaster 6th, and then it's Rossetti, Arnell, Fernerhuff and McConaughey side by side again, as Cerny didn't trust the racing line. He has to go to the inside, as we see Rossetti defending from Arnell into Agostini for the first time. The pair then go side by side for 7th. looks like Arnell has just got his nose in front. He has, yes. So Steve Arnell into 7th at the expense of Will Rossetti. And Paul Fernhoff and Blair McConaughey are also trading places, as are Richard Gallagher and Tim Vanhey. So we're into Oggies. It's a late apex, so early apex, so you sort of turn in, click the apex, and this corner opens out on the exit. A little wide there, I think, for Rowe as he kicks up the dust. But now onto the Bentley straight for the first time, the first proper overtaking opportunity in the slipstream. As you go on board with James Murphy, here's his vision. As you ride on board with him, he will dart out to the right-hand side. Now he'll be on the outside for Brundle, but on the inside for Nelson if he can stay there. Also look at Zaruta pushing Rowe down the back straight, side by side, and Murphy will sweep round the outside if he can. He has got the inside line into Nelson. Cerny can't do anything about it. He has to capitulate and lets him through. And here comes Rowe for 3rd place. Also on the grass there with 2 wheels is Zaruta, as he's trying to go side by side around the outside of the bomb hole. That's not going to work, Christian. Chris the other corner's proving that, because he's now going to scupper up the inside and go for 4th place if he can on the Brawn GP special. Almost hangs him out to dry, but Zaruta has got just about enough grip, and he does swing in front to hold on. So into Murray's for the first time, and up to the end of the first lap. Lots of action at the front of the field, Chris, but so far, there's been some position swapping, but Murphy still leads the way at the moment. There's one car that's had a spin down at Murphy's in the background. That's Chris Skillicorn, in fact. So whatever happened to him down there, whether he touched the back of Zaruta's car or not, he's there down to the bottom of the field. He's not a factor in this race anymore, sadly. And he'll have to fight his way through. But so far, it's as we expected. The top 5 of the championship are all top 5 in the race, but there's no clear definition as to who's going to pull away just yet, as the lead and 3rd place battles are still as close as ever.
Yeah, they're not working with each other at the moment as well. They're both going defensive. Murphy and Cerny both going defensive in their respective corners. And we saw that Dave and Christian were working a little bit together, although it didn't look like it going into bomb hole where Christian was pushed onto the grass a touch. But these guys are just pulling that little gap, and they're going sort of 2 by 2 at the moment. McMaster's in that middle ground, so he'll be looking to make that gap up. I mean, it's a shame that Chris Skillicon it looked from what I could see like he did, as we see Christian diving down the inside of David Rowe there into Agostini, and looks like he might have made that stick. He has. Great move there by Christian. Great racing move. But yeah, I was just saying how well Chris Skillicon was doing, but it looked like he lost it all by himself coming into the last corner. Just on it's really unbalanced there on the brakes, and you're trying to make the car turn and brake and slow down, and all at the same time, and it just caught him out.
It's also close there for Cerny. He went to go to turn to the apex of Agostini and found that James Murphy's car was still there, so he had to take a second bite at it, turn out of it, and then go at it again. It's possibly lost him a little bit of momentum. He's lost a little bit more now as they come onto the back straight. Now remember, we keep saying it time after time, in Assetto Corsa, which is where the racing here is based in our particular sim of choice, and with these cars, the magical gap time margin that you want to get yourself a tow is within half a second. So just outside of it there, going onto the Bentley straight was Cerny. He managed to get it back as he ran towards Brundle and Nelson. And they were side by side again for 3rd. And McMaster, he's off again. He's happened at the 420Rs, and he's off the road. I'm not sure what he's up to.
I think that might have been connection.
Yeah, I did look at that. Him sort of, almost like he was blazing a trail across the desert or something, but or like one of those salt flats, but not quite. So it looks like it's possibly a lag spike for him for some reason. He's been put back into the pit, so he's showing us in the lead, but this will change as soon as the leaders go past the pit lane now. So is that a connection issue then for Steve McMaster? If it is, then he just can't get a break around Snetterton at championship finales, can he? Because he had problems in the 420Rs when he got caught up in, I think it was 3 incidents over the 2 races. And now connection issues for Steve. He cannot get any luck at this circuit. Running wide there was James Murphy, and off the road has gone David Rowe. So it's all kicked off. I think they're seeing exactly what Steve did. I think they want to follow suit and start running off the road. So David Rowe's gone sideways in the middle of the exit of Wilson Hairpin. Through has gone Steve Arnell. I'm not quite sure what's happening at the moment, Chris, because everything seems to be kicking off at once. Yeah, they behaved far too well on the opening laps. They're kind of making up for it now. But yeah, David Rowe's now got Arnell. Arnell going great result coming up into 4th place there. But David Rowe will be looking to dispatch him very quickly. But ultimately he's got to do that in a fair fashion so that he's got enough time then to come back at the group in front. But it gives Zaruta and it gives Murphy, who's just pulling that little gap in front there for over Cerny as well. So he's kind of made a mistake at a very crucial time in this race. Unfortunately, as you can see on the timing pylon on the left-hand side, Steve McMaster out of the race, and that must be due to connection problems. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid that may well put his championship chances, that may have scuppered his championship chances once and for all. So it might now just be a quartet for the title, because it looks as though, I'm afraid, Steve McMaster will not be scoring any points. Remember, he cannot drop any more points as he missed out 2 races at Camberwell Park, which therefore means it's a no score, and he will drop down the order with drivers around him climbing up the table. So this is now David Rowe. He needs to get 4th place back for Steve Arnell. He's in the slipstream down towards Brandon Nelson, looking around the outside. He has got the grip, he's got the confidence, and now with Arnell over the curb, Rowe turns in through Nelson, and he's back in front. A nice clean pass from the DPR team boss. He's now going to try and chase after his fellow DPR racer, well, current in the sim, ex in real life, Christian Zaruta. And I know that car still races in the hands of David Tan in the 310R Championship, so MotoGP Special not completely put to bed just yet. This is Richard Gallagher. He's on the back of Paul Fernhoff. He's been up and down in the 2 seasons that we've had. He's had some flashes of brilliance, some flashes of good pace, but there's been evenings when he's been off the pace and evenings when he's been on it, so he's been sort of there and thereabouts. But I just noticed there as well, as now we see Paul Fernhoff being put under pressure from Richard Gallagher. I did also notice that Steve Arnell's business wasn't quite finished with David Rowe. It looks like he's managed to get back into 4th for the moment, gets his nose ahead as they go into Ritchie's, runs deep, and now we see him looking for the switchback, but the speed that Rowe carried towards the apex and through Ritchie's corner was enough to hold on. So Arnell looks back to the outside to switch through, and now Rossetti wants to have a look at it. He's there in the golf-coloured duck egg blue and orange car in 6th position. So it's now 4th, 5th and 6th for the lead, but ultimately, Chris, this is not what David Rowe needs. If he wants to go for the title, he needs to pull away from these 2, or if not, at least try and work together to pull them towards the top 3, who are still having their own battle, with Murphy trying to get away from Cerny, and then Zaruta also giving chase to the top 2. Rowe needs to put his foot down now with the time he's got left, which is only 7.25 minutes, so he's not got long to get back into this, and that certainly won't help him either. A touch from Steve Arnell, and that's almost an inadvertent retaliation there as he rolled backwards. That definitely wasn't purposeful, but it seems to be a bit of karma there. But that definitely won't help him, and I think David Rowe certainly wouldn't appreciate that either. And that's another championship contender, Chris, who's heading strife in this race. 2 in 1 race so far. How many more are going to hit problems?
Yeah, that's not good. And again, it's the perennial problem when you get stuck in a battle with someone and you can't take your natural racing line. That's where the Caterham really suffers, because it can't take the full use of the track, and therefore can't you make the use of the full speed that you can take through corners. And then it just got he actually, David Rowe, locked up going into Agostini, and therefore had to slow it down a little bit more into the apex, and that just caught Steve Arnell out, who just tagged the rear end of him. We did see Steve Arnell waiting for David Rowe to restart, which is the correct approach, and therefore he's served his penalty. But nevertheless, that's no consolation for David Rowe at this point, who's got a lot of work now to do. But he is one of the drivers that still does have a little bit of a 3-point advantage, in that he hasn't dropped any rounds yet that are on a particularly poor score, so he still might be able to make up the difference in the second race. Yeah,
because he has only dropped down to 7th. He's now behind Paul Fernhoff and Richard Gallagher, because of course Steve Arnell was also someone who dropped down, and he's back in 8th. So his worst result so far has been literally the first race of the season, where he scored 26 points. So at the moment, that's his worst score. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many points that would be compared to anything else, but I think that's possibly around the bottom of the top 10. So if he finishes 7th, he would still drop the 26 points, and he would still have those points on his record. So it's not too bad, I don't think, for him. Of course, we had Steve McMaster, of course, who scored enough decent results in the 420Rs and had 2 disastrous races, and still somehow won the championship. So it's not over just yet. Of course, Cerny will have a lot more points. Well, he's got less, in fact, actually. His worst result was 23 points. And that was at the first race in Brands Hatch. So he's got 3 less points to drop. So similar situations. The only person that's benefiting more, I suppose, is Cerny in terms of where he is on the road. This is the battle for currently 4th, 5th and 6th, because Rossetti's dropped away now from the scrap that was going on for the top 3. There's a big gap there between 3rd and 4th. And now Gallagher looks to the outside, under brakes into Agostini. Is he going to look for the switchback? He still thought about it, but looks to further have had that car neatly parked on the apex. And I just saw flashing through the shop there, David Rowe trying to use the clear track we've got ahead of him now to try and put in some quick lap times and get himself back into the top 6 if he possibly can do. So 8th is Steve Arnell, ironically, and 9th is Tim Van Hee, and 10th is James Fowler. And a couple of drivers who are regular front runners who have dropped down. We knew about Chris Skillicorn at the start of the race, but we've also seen Blair McConaughey drop down the order. He's someone who hasn't been known to qualify the best, but he usually has decent race pace. But he's back in 17th place, and well, that's going to be 16th now, because running out of wide there was Philip Clarke. But apart from that, Blair's another one who he does race best than he qualifies. I think even he will admit that. But tonight so far at the moment, Chris, whether he's had some strife early on, not really his night so far.
No, you're right. He's definitely further down at this point in the race than we'd expect to see. With only 4 minutes to go, he's not going to make any massive grounds up now. As you say, David Rowe still pushing hard in the background there, but Paul Fernhoff putting up with an awful lot of pressure here, and he's still not losing out too much to Will Rossetti. So Rossetti doing a good result. He started, I think, 5th or 6th on the grid, so he's actually moved up a couple of spots, which is exactly what he wants to see doing. He's had a good year, but from a couple of bad results, I think he would have been right up there with the championship charge as well.
I have a feeling that if Paul Fernhoff's pace is good enough to keep with Will Rossetti, that Gallagher has better pace to possibly even go after him and catch him. And I think he might have an opportunity if he can pass him here. Fernhoff knows exactly where Gallagher's going to go, to the outside down towards Ritchie's. They're going to be wheel to wheel in towards Ritchie's, the right-hander, very fast right-hander. Breaks a little bit later, but he's waiting for that switch back because he knew he was going to drift out wide, was Gallagher. Now Fernhoff is going to sense he's really under pressure here because again, absorbing it nicely, but you have to put the car right in the middle of the road. He forces Gallagher to take the wide approach again into Wilson Hairpin. A little twitch of oversteer there as Fernhoff runs wide on the exit. Gallagher tries to pull himself just halfway alongside at least to prove that he's entitled to be there. The outside line through Wilson, Palmer, where it's a little bit cambered, sort of like positively in terms of giving you the run through the corner, wasn't quite going to work there either. So he's going to try again to the outside. It's the closest battle so far at the front, in the field. At the front at the moment, it's still, whilst we look at this, it's still 1.4 seconds between James Murphy and Jaroslav Cerny, and then it's Jaroslav a further 1.2 back, and he's a further 8 seconds ahead of this scrap going on, with Rossetti just ahead of Fernhoff and Gallagher. David Rowe's 1.7 away from these two, and there he is, in fact, just in the shot on the black and green car, and that gap is coming down. I have to say, visibly, it looks like it's coming down quickly. And it certainly will do, Chris, if these two keep on scrapping. Yeah,
because they're not going side by side through the corners too much, they're not slowing themselves down enough. And I think with only 2 minutes to go, I think David might struggle to catch up. And even if he does catch up, these two are not going slowly. And as we see them go side by side again, they've been fighting absolutely nose to tail for this whole race so far. It's been brilliant to see.
We're at it again, into side by side into Brundle Nelson. Gallagher's finally got his nose in front this time. And running wide onto the grass because he was trying to be brave around the outside goes Paul Fernhoff. And straight onto his tail comes you-know-who, David Rowe, as they come into the bomb hole with, looking at the time, roughly, once I get a bit of a clearer shot as to what the time is, because the blue skies. 1.5 minutes, thanks for that, Chris. So into the long right-hander of Corbin back into Murray's. And as I suspected, Gallagher's got superior pace to Fernhoff, because look at that, in clear air, he's clearly pulling away. But unfortunately, I think it looks as though that he hasn't been able to utilise that as well as he was hoping. And because of that, he's now lost too much time and might not even catch him, I think. Across the line they go. Darting to the outside goes Rowe. Will he go around the outside to Ritchie's? I wouldn't put it past him. Into Ritchie's. Stays around the outside. Staying around the outside still. Fernhoff tries to hold the inside line. He moves across a little bit. Edges into the road to the edge of the track towards the white line. A little bit cheeky there from Paul, but he gave him as much room as he needed to. And still, Paul just holds on to the place. We've got Steve Arnell, who's not that close to making another challenge in 8th position. Still got Tim Vanhee 9th and James Fowler in 10th. And now again, they're very thinking that the outside move at Palmer might work. Doesn't quite do it this time. So again, he'll do exactly what Gallagher did a lap ago. He'll go to the outside towards Agostini. He might get a bit of a side draft once, and then twice they almost come into contact. He looks around the outside. We know how this worked out before, with two cars going side by side, and one of them being David Rowe into the Agostini hairpin. Didn't quite work that time. What about this time into Hamilton's? Yes, he does, around the outside. A nice clean pass there. They both drop a wheel onto the exit, across the exit curve onto the AstroTurf. You see there Gallagher getting away, as now it's David Rowe is back into the top 6, but he's not going to make too much more headway, I don't think. As we onto the final lap of the race. Here are our top 3, with Cerny in 2nd place and Zaruta trying to give chase in 3rd. But it looks as though, Chris, that James Murphy is doing everything he needs to try and put himself into a prime position to potentially steal the championship away if results still go in his favour elsewhere, as well as what he's doing. But pretty much a flawless drive so far for him on this final lap so far. Yeah, really good stuff. And like I say, you can't do any more than that, can you? Get the fastest lap and win the race. So he's done as much as he can to help his results. So we're going to be scrambling around during the off break to see whether we can put all these results together and talk them through for the end of the race. But yeah, great result for James Murphy out front, and Cerny losing gap here to Christian, but not going to quite lose out enough. Is it possibly a victory that could help him to snatch the title? We'll have to wait and see, but until then, James Murphy does pick up victory in the first race tonight here at Snetterton in the caterhamracer.com Championship. Second place goes to Jaroslav Cerny. Third, spinning his way across the line, goes Christian Zaruta. It's fourth for Will Rossetti. He'll be happy with that. So will Richard Gallagher. And as for David Rowe, he'll be cursing his bad luck in sixth, just ahead of Paul Fernerhuff. And of course, the culprit of the contact, Steve Farnell, is back in eighth position. Ninth goes to Tim Vanhey. 10th to James Fowler. 11th to Andy Parker. And it's side by side for 12. Look at that between Alan Curtis and Tom McEwing, and Tom McEwing just in front for 12. It's Blair McConaughey back in 14th. Quite an off night for him, as it also is for Emil Jaselinks. Not quite quick enough as quick as we've seen him in the past. But it's Coomber, Rodman, Clarke, Earlham, and then Skillercorn will trail home in 20th place. What could have been for him after he went off in the first lap and possibly just never recovered his pace before. Mike Hilton will last car to cross the line. And then in 22nd, of course, classified 22nd after his unfortunate retirement due to, we think, connection issues, was poor Steve McMaster. Cannot get a break at Snetterton, particularly on finals weekend. So James Murphy then wins that first race. He does it by 1.5 seconds, and that earns him the maximum score of 35 points. Jaroslav Cerny picks up 33 for second. It's 32 for Christian Zaruta, 31 for Will Rossetti, 30 for Richard Gallagher, and then David Rowe will pick up 29. So it's not his worst score of the season. His worst score was 9th place, and that was at the first race at Alton Park. So he won't drop those points. He's already dropping 26. But no, yes, he will. So forgive me, what am I saying? He will drop those points because it's his second worst result. So because they're dropping 2 scores, so he will drop those, and he'll drop 29 points, which means he will. He won't get any point. He won't get any points. He will get back. I think he'll get a couple more points back, and he will in fact score the equivalent of 31 points, which means that I think on that one, if I'm correct, he'll have only dropped behind Cerny by another 2 points on drop scores, I think. So
welcome to the wonderful world of drop scores, Scott. It is complicated business, isn't it?
Well, this is what I'm trying to work out, because of course, if he's dropping these 29 points that he's just scored, then he'll gain back 31, which means he gets back 2 extra points that he would have scored anyway. But he also got outscored by Cerny by 2 points, because he got outscored by him, because of course it was 33 for Cerny, 32 for Zaruta, and Cerny's already dropping from that one. We've got 23 points and then 30 points, so he's dropping 53 points in total, whereas David Rowe is, just do my quick maths for a second, he is dropping possibly 55 points, I think. Yes, 55 points. So in actual fact, David Rowe drops more points than Cerny does. And so there's a bit of a bigger gap there. But anyway, we've seen the top 10. So Murphy, Cerny, Zaruta, it's Rossetti, Gallagher, Rowe, Fernerhuff, Arnell, Vanhey, and Fowler is the top 10. Then Parker 11th, McEwing 12th. Then it's Curtis, Blair McConaughey, Emma Jaselinks, then Michael Coomber, Mark Rodman, Philip Clarke, Earlham, and Skillercorn. And the last 2 cars on that page are Hilton and McMaster, who sadly disconnected and therefore did not finish and does not score. So moving into the second race with cars already in the mix. Now, it's a dubious question to ask, Chris, but do we have... I'll dubiously refresh my screen and see where we are on drop scores and if those
not quite
first race results
I'm just
going
to pump them through now, so I will get them updated as soon as I can.
Okay, good, excellent. So, good reminder that if you want to watch Caterham racing in real life, as we mentioned, there is the season finale of Caterham Motorsport this coming weekend, 31st of October. Yes, it's Halloween, but there's no frights expected, at least not for any championship contenders, hopefully. Snetterton 300, I think you can still buy tickets online, but I think that'll be till usually it's 4 o'clock on the Friday afternoon, because of course they have to be e-tickets. I think any time after that, and you cannot purchase them, so they have to be pre-purchased. And it will be the final rounds of the Caterham Road Sport 270, 310R, and 7 UK championships. Plus, also we'll see a glimpse of Road Sport in 2021, because there is going to be a non-championship Caterham Road Sport 2021 challenge race, and there is about 30 plus cars, all drivers who are moving up and have already upgraded their cars from Academy Spec to Road Sport Spec for next year, get a first taste of what those cars are going to be like next season. And if they're going to be anything like they were at Donington for their Alton Trophy race, I cannot wait.
Scores
Chris,
updated,
you have news?
Scott. Yep, scores updated. So Cerny does lead the championship with 329. 322 David Rowe sitting behind, and James Murphy is now 303 on drop scores total. So as long as all the totals are working out, yes, you can now see on caterhamracer.com, if you go to the championship results tables, you can see them just as we're about to head into a new race, I think.
And what's intriguing, one big change, Will Rossetti's up to 4th, so that could be key at the end. But let's find out then who wraps up the title. The final race of Season 2 of the caterhamracer.com Academy Championship is about to be decided. Let's find out who becomes the champion. Red lights go out, and for the final time, we're racing in the Academy cars. It's a pretty even start from Cerny and Murphy down towards Richie's corner for the first time. They all get away cleanly. Watch McMaster from the back of the grid, of course, in 22nd place. They come into Richie's. It's 2x2 for first and third. Up the inside for the lead goes Cerny. Into third place goes the route around the outside of Rossetti. Also slotting to 5th goes Richard Gallagher. 6th is David Rowe. But leading now into Wilson Hairpin, it is Murphy retaking the lead. The pole sitter, a race 1 winner, is back in front. And there's contact in the background. 3 or 4 cars have made contact. I think Tim Van, he's one of them. Blair McConaughey, I thought, was another one. McMaster isn't, thankfully. He's up to 14th already up on the back of the grid. So looks like Jim Earlham, Mike Hilton's also involved. A couple more are also hitting strives. So not quite the tidiest of starts in the midfield. It's now there goes Christian Zaruta diving up the inside for second. On Agostini on Cerny, couldn't quite get that done. And up to 4th, incredibly, has gone Richard Gallagher. He's passed Will Rossetti, and looking to follow him through is also David Rowe there in the background, the black and green car in what is currently 6th position. Now make it, well, not quite 5th. He might look to the inside of the Rockies here if he can play it right. Looking into the right-hander, squeezes Rossetti out wide, and he does get himself in front. And Steve Arnell, probably one person David Rowe doesn't want to see behind him, is right in the mix too. Thankfully, they've got a car between them as they come into Bentley Straight for the first time. So Murphy leads then, Cerny 2nd, Zaruta 3rd, Gallagher up to 4th now, and he might be in the slipstream here to take advantage if he's close enough. 5th place now for David Rowe, 6th for Rossetti. This is the onboard view for Christian Zaruta. He is in the slipstream as they come under the bridge, through Brundle, and then through the right-hand flick of Nelson. And Rowe is in 5th position. He's right on the tail of Gallagher already as they funnel their way through one by one, and Zaruta was a little sideways on the exit there, and Rossetti trying to put his nose up the inside of the bomb hole, but couldn't quite make that one stick either. Runs a little wide on the exit on the approach to Caterham, but still as they were as they turn through this long, almost never-ending right-hander. In the tricky braking zone, we have to get the car anchored up as quickly as possible in as straight a line as possible. You flick left, and going up the inside looked to be Rossetti. He was all over the curb as he went through the right-hander at Murray's, and one car's lost it sideways in the background, and that is Andrew Parker. But across the line they go to the end of the first lap, and it's side-by-side for third between Zaruta and Gallagher by the looks of it, or at least Zaruta is chasing down the top 2. But again, an action-packed start, and the top 3 as we expected are the top 3 we would have expected in front, once again in the same order as they finished race 1, Chris.
Yeah, so it looks like there's, again, little gaps appearing. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to disappear, but what a great result from Richard Gallagher. We sort of said last time out that he'd had some ups and downs throughout the season, but definitely proving on and up at the moment, and in a solid 4th place, and David Rowe looking now to chase him down for those extra few points.
So out through Palmer then, and onto the little short straight towards Agostini on this Snetterton 300 layout. It's been in existence since about 2011 or so. It's good to see that it's given an extra dimension to the Snetterton circuit, because what's known as the 200 layout was the existing layout for ages until, again, towards the end of 2009, 2010, when Dr. Jonathan Palmer made the investment and, of course, decided to make it a longer circuit. And, of course, it made it pretty much 3 miles exactly in length, and that's why it's called the 300 circuit for that matter. Heading into Oggies now on the 2nd lap. Still Murphy from Cerny. Then it's Zaruta in 3rd place. Gallagher's 4th. David Rowe 5th and Steve Arnell in 6th position. Then Rossetti, Fowler. McConaughey's up to 9th. He's doing well. Steve McMaster is in 10th now. He's passed Michael Coomber. So from the back of the grid in 1.5 laps. And doing well to pick his way through that midfield carnage is McMaster. So his chances of the championship might well be pretty much, dead and buried, sadly. But he's still trying to put on a good race here so far. And a decent start, picking up, 12 places in 1.5 laps, Chris. He certainly feels he's got some unfinished business and trying to fight as hard as he can now to get as strong a result as possible to finish off what's been
Yeah.
quite a disastrous couple of weekends at Snetterton. I think that's an understatement to say the least.
Yeah, it's going to be dropping down his favourite list, isn't it, for sure? And what, there's never a good time for a disconnect, but right at the end of the season, it's definitely not the best for him. So that's really unfortunate. Front three still maintaining these sort of even gaps, just probably hovering around that toe region, but none of them doing. As Richard Gallagher loses the rear end in the background, so that's given David Rowe back to 4th place again now. So thank you very much on behalf of David, I would say, for that one, and actually Arnell's got through as well. So can David Rowe now catch up and act as an interference into this front battle?
Possibility. James Murphy sets the fastest lap of the race. That is arguably qualifying pace. He's put in a 2 minutes 14.869 to get himself about 6/10 in front. And Zaruta now is possibly giving him a little bit of unofficial backup here. And of course, as you said, David Rowe gets a free pass into 4th now. And he's got to try and make up on his gap, a 2.8 second advantage. And he's got, what's he got now? About sort of just under 10 minutes to do so. So he's only taken him a third of the race to get himself into 4th. If he can get some clear laps here in clear air, that's definitely not outside the realms of possibility that he could catch these three, particularly if these three keep on scrapping the way they have been so far. I think Zaruta is looking the raciest out of these three drivers to try and get his way through and up into 2nd place. And that would certainly help in some cases Rowe's cause, but it would also mean that Cerny is still outscoring Rowe by at least 1 point. So it would still mean that Cerny will pick up the championship provisionally. If it stays as it was, it will be Cerny's title. But of course, it's never over until we get the checker flag. So out of Oggies into Williams and onto the Bentley straight for the 3rd time. It's still Murphy leading, Cerny 2nd, Zaruta 3rd. And it's 0.7 of a second between Murphy and Cerny. It's just over half a second between Cerny and Zaruta. So fairly evenly matched so far, Chris. And whilst we see in the background David Rowe is trying to catch up with clear air, he has still got Arnell and Gallagher behind him. And he's now 3 seconds back and not really making the amount of inroads he would have hoped as he starts to run out of time.
Yeah, it's a tough ask when they're not actually going side by side. As soon as this battle goes side by side, then we'll see him make up that ground really quickly. But without the side by side action, he's not going to make this gap. The three in front just have too much pace for that to happen. Zaruta definitely is looking hungry. He has a sort of better end to the lap, whereas Cerny has a better middle of the lap, and that means that he's got a bit of a gap where he's going down the long back Bentley straight. So this is where Christian looks most threatening up in this first part of the early lap, and he's looking close enough to act as again, just trying to shove his nose up the inside and maybe see what will happen. And they're both wily characters though, so they both know where to position their cars to give maximum impact.
Whilst that's happening, James Murphy just set a time that's quicker than his qualifying pole position time. 2 minutes 14.605, which is pretty extraordinary. What's also extraordinary is the battle for 2nd, and here comes Zaruta up the inside, and Cerny does not need this. He needs to try and keep himself as high a position as he can, although he might be able to be thinking he can possibly afford to slip back to 3rd place. But then again, he's a sim racer, and if he can sense a chance of victory, he will certainly take it as best he can. So he's not going to give this up too easy, but now Zaruta is into 2nd, and I wonder now he's got himself past Cerny at the moment and possibly has some clear air. We can start to close in on Murphy here. Cerny's looking to the outside. Oh, he's very close to clipping the back of Zaruta's car there, but he managed to get it anchored up quickly enough in time to turn into Agostini. There is, in the foreground, David Rowe in 4th place, but still almost 3 seconds back. So I can't quite see, unless these two have a really big scrap and allow Murphy to sail off into the distance, he's going to catch him anytime soon. Back under brakes into Oggies, and again I think Cerny was looking for that undercut on the exit of the corner. Slides a little wide as he gets the power on, but again that wasn't going to work either as they now come back into the Bentley straight. Now I think this is for the 4th time as they come with just under 7 minutes to go, and now the sprint towards Brundle Nelson begins. And look at the sort of advantage that Murphy has now. It's 1.7 seconds. He's way out of the toe, but not so much the same here for Cerny and Zaruta. Cerny is pulling level on the approach towards the complex. They're going to go underneath the bridge, and Cerny will have his nose just in front, but if he can hold on to the grip around the outside, he can get in front, which he does on both fronts, and he makes his way through back into 2nd place. But I suspect with the way they're battling, not only is it letting Murphy get away, but even so, I suspect, Chris, this is not over by a long shot between these two. They will keep on going back and forth as much as they want to.
No, and arguably Cerny's got quite a lot more to lose than Zaruta has in this situation. He's got the championship to try and hold on to, so any kind of contact and spinning right down the field could affect that quite heavily. So yeah, again, we've seen Sharuta made the move early in the lap, and then we saw Cerny get it back in the late lap. So it definitely seems like a sequence where they're both stronger in different places. We see Sharuta again lining him up, coming up into Rich's.
You make a very good point that Cerny has to be very careful. He doesn't get caught up in something that could compromise him too much. He's going to hold onto the outside line through Richie's, and I think at this point let Zaruta have the position. He gets a good slingshot from Richie's down towards Wilson Hairpin. He will try and get him back if he can put himself through the undercut, and he looks for it. There was a little bit of I thought there was a bit of contact there, if not a tiny little nudge. And again, that's an incident which could have happened, but Cerny doesn't really need to get involved in. He just needs to try and come home and bank the points. But try telling someone who's about to win the championship that he could also win the race, tell him to slow down. He's not really going to listen to you, is he? So still second and third battling away. It's still side by side as it was a lap ago for the position. David Rowe has got the gap down to, what is it now, 2 seconds. So he's taking advantage of these two battling. He's pulled away slightly from Steve Arnell to the tune of 1.3 seconds. Even through the hairpin there, he's getting back another 3/10. So it just shows how much these two are actually holding each other up. They lost 3/10 with that to one corner alone. And David Rowe's using this to full advantage. If they carry on like this, it is only 4 3/4 minutes, Chris, but they're battling that half a second and third. I don't think Rowe's actually out of this just yet for a podium. He could well get one if he carry on like this.
No, exactly that. As soon as as I said earlier, as soon as they start going side by side, that's when you'll see David make those big chunks of time back. And it doesn't look like they are going to stop that at all as Christian sort of gently weaves down the straight, trying to throw off that toe. But again, they're both wily characters. They're not going to be forcing that one. But Cerny's going around the outside again, and every time you go around the outside, you do put yourself at risk to a lock-up or a mistake from the other driver. So they're putting a lot of trust in each other as well here, with Christian going back for the undercut, going into the bomb hole. Again, another really tight part of the track. There's not enough room for two cars, so one of them's going to have to give way.
And it has to be Cerny, and he runs out wide and actually loses a little bit of momentum as a result of that. And what that's now going to do is, again, bring Rowe back into play here. The gap is now under a second to these two. So, incredibly, it was about 1.6. It was 2 seconds at one point. He's gained 1.3 seconds on this lap alone for this point, and he's now right underneath them as they come onto the pit straight. There goes Murphy, sailing away to the tune of almost 4 seconds here. So he's pretty much away and gone now. It is up to second, third, and fourth to sort out, arguably, who wants it more. So Zaruta trying to break the toe on the run towards Richie's again with just under 3.5 minutes to go. And now Zaruta is going to head into Richie's with Cerny on his tail, followed by David Rowe. Change for fifth behind Steve Arnell has just passed Richard Gallagher. That's a switch for them. It's Will Rossetti 7th, James Fowler 8th, Steve McMaster's up to 9th at the expense of Blair McConaughey and getting sideways in the middle of the apex. The Wilson hairpin there is Justin Zaruta, and the same on the exit there for Cerny as he tried to avoid contact. Rowe is right underneath the pair of them, and they're still trying to look side by side into Palmer through the left-hander. Slightly banked left-hander as they come onto the little short straight towards Agostini, and once one had shown, Rowe's going to put himself right into the fight here. 3 for second place. What a way to end the season. Under brakes into Agostini once more as they turn in through the left-hander, 180 degrees. And still Cerny is just can't resist battling away with Zaruta. He knows if he stays exactly where he is, he's ahead of David Rowe. He's going to be crowned the champion. If he keeps on taking risks like this, it might well slip away in his fingers. He might be getting too caught up in this battle, and he makes a little bit of contact, I think, heading into Oggies. And Rowe might get up the inside if he's not careful enough, but I think he's forgetting the fact that he's battling for a championship here. Whether he knows it's in the bag or not, he simply isn't just listening and having too much fun battling. He might not realise, Chris, that if it goes wrong here, that could be his title chances over.
Problem is the decision's been taken out of his hands now. He has to battle now. So he could have sat down before and just let Christian move away, but he's now in a position where he's got to battle. Otherwise, David Rowe will be past him. And whilst that still might not make any difference, the three-way battle's even more complicated than a two-way battle as far as things that can go wrong. And again, they're side by side into bomb hole, and that's really going to cost him more time. So he's let him go earlier this time, and will sit there. But nevertheless, David Rowe is going to be right on their tails going up across the line this time.
Yeah, and this time they will start the last lap of the season, so it's going to be pretty key here. Again, for the record, there goes James Murphy in the background, almost 6 seconds ahead now. So he looks, touch wood, fairly comfortable for the victory. But as we said, it's not over until they get to the checkered flag. So second, third, and fourth all on a line together. This is a preview for this weekend in real life at Snetterton, isn't it, with these three? Because it's a long straight, and Caterham's, of course, are very unaerodynamic, which means they punch a large hole in the air. And certainly Cerny is taking full advantage of that with Zaruta as they come onto the last lap of the season. It's side by side again in the background for the record between Gallagher and Arnell, as now looking for the switch back on the exit of Richie's looks Cerny. Zaruta tries to move across and cover the line, but he's too late. Cerny's putting himself right alongside the number 2 machine as they go into Wilson. There's a little bit of touch again. Here comes David Rowe, just arriving onto the rear wheel of Zaruta. Little touch between the 2 DPR cars back towards Palmer's. And there's almost... Oh, and David Rowe's off the road, and Zaruta's... So there was contact between the pair, I think. Rowe possibly touched the back of Zaruta's car, and it didn't benefit him. So I'm afraid that's David Rowe out of it. He's definitely not going to be champion this season. They're going to come down towards Agostini for the last time. Again, the lead's gone back out by another second or so another half second to 6.5. It looks as though that Cerny has finally got through, Chris, but at what expense? Because, of course, he is in second place, and it will pretty much, I think, give him the title. But what could have been for a victory, he spent he spent far too long battling with Christian to try and make that happen for second. He lost too much time to Murphy to make him be any sort of a threat for him going forwards.
Yeah, he could have probably sat back a little bit earlier and caused himself less issues overall, but nevertheless, that, you know, racers be racers, and they always want to move forward. Very much side-by-side contact there between David Rowe and Christian Zaruta, and it looked like, you know, it's one of those things where the magnets get turned on when 2 wheels come in contact, and it just speared David off into the scenery, and Christian then moved off, and just sort of came undisturbed through that corner. But for David, that is the end of his championship charge. I think it was unlikely he was going to make up that move, but is that going to cost him his podium on the championship?
Well, the person he could take it from, and Will Rossetti's right behind him if he's not careful. So I think he's off the road again in the background, unless I'm mistaken. I think he's possibly getting a bit frustrated to realise that it's not going to happen, and so he's just pushing as hard as he dares. Speaking of pushing, this man really has been untouchable all evening at the front of the field. Look at him. He has spread-eagled the field in this final race of the season. It might not quite be enough for the title, but he's done everything he could to try and take it away. It's going to be James Murphy who will secure the double then at Snetterton. We're coming through for second place, and we're pretty certain we think is going to be possibly champion-elect. It's going to be Jaroslav Cerny cross the line in second place. I think the weaving gives it away. He may well be champion-elect in the Academy Championship. Third place to Christian Zaruta, fourth to Richard Gallagher, fifth to Steve Arnell. And what happened to David Rowe? He was sixth at one point. He's dropped right the way down to 13th place. So 7th place then for McMaster, 8th goes to Parker, 9th McConaughey, 10th Fowler, 11th goes to Fernhoff, 12th for Vanny, and there is David Rowe. Well, it's not your night, it's just not your night, is it? 14th for Mark Rodman, that's 15th for McEwing, side by side for 16th, but it sees Kuma just holding on to Skithercorn, so he had another race that was full of strife. 18th for Jim Earlham, 19th for Alan Curtis, 20th for Mike Hilton, and then it's Philip Clarke with the last finish as he comes across the line, and Emil Jaselinks was sadly a non-finisher after he pitted in. You can tell it's end of season because everyone's gone mad, they're all crashing into each other. There's no damage anyway, but they're all doing donuts on the grass, and I think if that was real life, Dr. Palm will be sending out several invoices for them to get that re-sewn. But even so, it's the virtual world, so we don't have to worry about that. But then the final race results of the season, and it's James Murphy who completes a double tonight. 2 victories, but that wasn't enough to deny, we think, at least I think anyway, looking at the provisional scores, possibly Jaroslav Cerny from being champion-elect of the 2020 Caterham Academy, caterhamracer.com Academy Championship Season 2, the first champion. Because, of course, Season 1 was a series. There was no official champion there and no points scored. Christian Zaruta, after a frantic battle with Cerny, ends up 3rd. It's Richard Gallagher 4th, ahead of Steve Arnell 5th, Will Rossetti 6th. Steve McMaster, from the back of the grid, I remind you, in 22nd place on the grid, up to 7th. That was a good drive from him to end off the year. Then it's, of the season at least, 8th for Andy Parker, 9th for Blair McConaughey, and 10th for James Fowler, 11th for Paul Ferdinand, 12th for Tim Vanhey, 13th for David Rowe. Again, luck just wasn't with him tonight, and it wasn't really for him to be able to pick up that title. He was close, but sadly, just wasn't his evening. 14th place for Mark Rodman, 15th for Tom McEwing. Then it's Michael Coomber, Chris Skillercorn, Jim Earlham, Alan Curtis, and Mike Hilton. And the last 2 cars classified from 21st to 22nd were Philip Clarke and Emil Jaselinks. And just like that, the season is over. And I think Chris is very frantically putting in the last few results of these, or he's probably about to as James Murphy saying in the chat, Cheesy, you need to speak to Zaruta and Dave. I think he absolutely has to after that, because I'm sure they'll have some tales to tell about the season, and particularly tonight. But as we move into what will be, I'm sure, conversations very shortly, another season in the books, then we sort of capped off 420Rs, and we've capped off the entire Caterham Racer season now for Season 2 with the Academy finale. And I have to admit, since everything started back in March, it's March-April time, it's been been quite a ride, hasn't it, Chris? And to get to this point where we've now crowned our first champions, I guess it's something, at least for you at least, for a project that's taken several months and quite a bit of time, but quite a labour of love, as I'm sure feels not just for the champions, but for yourself as well, pretty special.
Yeah, we can't wait to do it all again in season 3. Like I say, keep an eye out on all our socials and things for that, as we just wait for the times to sort of tick down, so hopefully we can now get the results. So I'm just about to process those results, and hopefully we'll have them all to show, and then we can see if we can jump in and have a chat with some of the drivers. So it'll be a couple of minutes before I can, I think, sort of announce who is officially the championship winner.
So yeah, absolutely. But so I think whilst we do that, we should also give a few thanks to plenty of people who have made both of the championships happen. So of course we have to thank, obviously, it's a big one, but Assetto course, of course, for providing the software. We have to give thanks to Ben Obro and to Jaroslav Cerny for being the two main driving forces behind the two cars that we reuse, the Academy and the 420Rs. Of course, their developments, of course, and as we say, some exciting developments in the background which are being worked on for season 3. So we'll give you more information on those as and when they come up. But we know, of course, all the feedback that's been coming in from all the drivers who drive these cars, not just on the circuits in real life and race them, but even those who drive and drive Caterhams on the road and on track days who also race in this championship. They're also giving feedback as well to make these cars as better, more realistic, more authentic, and just all-round better products, more refined and polished products as possible. Big thank you to Just Add Lightness, who have been supporting both of the championships, and also we have to give thanks to the design and display structures, and also to Avon Tyres for supporting 420Rs. Thank you to all the drivers who have been taking part in both seasons, all the new ones that we've had this season. Of course, we appreciate as well, of course, our two Belgian drivers. Of course, we had Jaroslav, Tim Manhy and Emil de Sellings, who've been racing with us. Great to have you in the season. And of course, Jaroslav's been racing himself, of course, being the Czech driver. It's good to have a couple of international drivers in the field, and hopefully we get a few more going to season 3. And I guess I have to say, also, I guess everyone has the main person to thank, including myself, I guess, as well, is, well, you, Chris, because if it wasn't for yourself, this series would not have existed in the first place. We wouldn't have been going racing in season 1 in lockdown. So to put it all together and to now reach 2 seasons worth and playing season 3, which should be hopefully even bigger and better, I guess everyone, including myself, has to say one big thank you to you as well.
Yeah, and let's pat each other on the back. Great broadcast. I love the broadcast aspect of this, and long may it continue. I have now got the championship tables updated, so we can bring them to you on our screen as we speak.
So on the screen, and I'll refresh my table to give you the live results as well. There it is then. The results are in, and that is how it looks. It is Jaroslav Cerny who is on drop scores by 10 points. We can crown the Season 2 caterhamracer.com Caterham Academy champion. He has done it by 10 points on drop scores from David Rowe in second place. But look at that, how close it was. James Murphy threw everything he could at tonight, but incredibly, finishing even that worst result there means that actually was a bit of a benefit to David Rowe, because he managed to gather back a few points, and he just beat Murphy to second place by 1 single point on drop scores. Christian Zaruta's strong night helps him earn 4th, ahead of Will Rossetti in 5th position. Then it's Steve McMaster in 6th, 7th place for Richard Gallagher, 8th for Blair McConaughey in points, and it's a tie for 9th between Steve Arnell and Tim Manhy, but I think it's going to be Arnell that gets it because he has more. I think that's more 5th positions because he's got 2 compared to 1 for Tim Manhy on countback. 11th place for Paul Vernehoff, 12th goes to Andy Parker. We'll go through the full run, we've got time to do it. So 13th place for Guy Crawford. He's been someone who's been very impressive throughout these 2 seasons. 14th place is Tom McEwing. 15th place for Matt Shepherd. Chris Skithercorn's had a bit of an up and down season, but he finishes 16th. For Michael Coomber, Mark Rodman, Alan Curtis, and Emma Selix, who's been sporadic in his appearances, but he ends up in 20th place in points. Then going down, we've got 21st, we've got Jim Erlam, Philip Clarke, Rob Oldland, Daniel Mitchell, and he's still rounding up the top 25. Then Paul Hawker, Mike Hilton, Alberto Villa, Richard Hall, and James Fowler rounding up the top 30. And then the last few cars that competed and scored points were Tom Allen, Toby Baum, Mark Sempers, Richard Groom, Ben Buckley, and Jay Shepherd. 36 drivers competed in at least one race this season and scored points on the board. So I think for the final time as a whole this season, it's time for you to doff your pit reporting cap for a second. Chris, can trundle down the pit lane and have a chat to a couple of drivers. I think if we can, I don't know if he's around or not, but it'd be good to speak to our new champion. But if not, at least the guys in 2nd and 3rd place. I know that James was saying you have to speak to David and Christian. I guess we'll find out if we do. But for one last time, Chris, for this season, off you go, and let's see who we can find.
Well, I'm hoping that we've got David and James both in the commentary booth, and let's start with James. James, two dominant wins, I'd say. You know, a bit tasty at the beginning of the races, but then got your gap and never looked back.
Yeah, that was really good fun, and to be honest, all I can think about is if I manage to do the same at the weekend, one, it will be a miracle, and second, I'll bring home a championship. So I'm kind of, I'm getting nervous as I'm sitting here, because that went perfectly. That went absolutely perfectly. Pole and a double win, fastest lap. I enjoy it in the academy here. The balance of the car, particularly those two hairpins. So it was a fun race, a bit lonely. And I've got to say, gents, you've got. I think Dave's in here as well. You've got the wrong man, because a battle was behind. And I'd love to hear what Mr. Zaruta and Mr. Rowe have to say to each other if you're brave enough, Cheesy.
Let's just quickly say to David, you have managed to hold on to second in the championship, so congratulations for that. But it was a close run thing with James. You missed out by a point there on second place.
But I
Unbelievable. Yeah, that's quite unbelievable. But yeah, brilliant. I've got to say, it's been a bloody good laugh all year. Even the banter with Mr. Zaruto has been funny at times, I've got to say. So yeah, it's been great. It's been good. I need to look back on the replay there, Cheesy. I think I'm gonna have to take a bit of a look at it.
Let's bring Christian in as well. And I don't know if Christian, have you got audio? Not sure whether Christian. Oh, he has got audio. Hello.
Hello.
Aha, Christian. So I've been asked to bring you both into the commentary box to have a stern.
Oh,
where there was a bit
why.
of side by side action there, and it looked like you did take David off going into Palmer.
I mean,
I'd
I'd argue David took himself off after I worked so hard the entire race, holding up Cerny for him, and then he bottled it. I'd argue he bottled it, to be honest.
Cheesy, I thought this was going to be a bit of a team game, but Schnizzles created deep and long enemies out of this one. We look forward to season 3, the return of the Schnizzle.
What a brilliant way to sort of key up season 3 then. So we're already starting with rivalries. That's really good to hear. And congratulations, David, on your second place. Christian, you made up some ground there, but didn't quite make it into the top there. So next season, I'm sure we'll be up for more, yeah?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, indeed. I'll be back to take out Dave again.
Where did Christian finish out of interest?
Christian finished in 7th place.
Amazing.
Drop scores.
Yes, that's on drop scores.
Oh, dear.
Yes. All right.
I thought on drop scores he finished 4th.
Oh, maybe I'm on the wrong page.
I think you're on the wrong page.
Yes,
Jeez.
4th. Okay.
Yeah,
4th.
I've got it on drop scores 4th with 306 points. So you were
correct.
15 behind James and 16 behind David, because it was a point between David and James for second.
Oh, I should have sent you further into the barrier.
Just to get this right, Christian finished behind me.
He did.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Well, can confirm can confirm you are the top DPR driver out of everyone in the points table.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I am going to now.
I suspect this weekend that James and Co are not going to hear the end of that, are they?
Well, he didn't do so well in the 420s, though, did he? So I'll keep his mouth shut.
I am now going to banish these two from the commentary box, and never will we have a team chat again. But yeah, that really awesome, and like I say, it's building up to a good season 3. So keep your eyes out for caterhamracer.com for what comes next. We're really excited about what we're going to be doing over winter and then into the new year.
I do love the fact that it's a rivalry starting for next year, but it's rivalry between for DPR between their own team, between all 3 of them. So
yeah,
it's bad enough having to fend off Cerny and Co trying to battle them against him, but now it's amongst each other. I'm pretty sure that civil war in teams doesn't work out. I think Rosberg and Hamilton 2016 is a certain example to look at, but hopefully won't get as bad as that at one point. But there we go. That is once again a wrap up for caterhamracer.com and a wrap up for the season, of course, for season 2. It's been pretty magical. It's been all sorts of great racing, of course, on the sim side of things, and I know that obviously with everything going on in the world, it's nice to have a bit of an escape from reality sometimes with the sim racing. And of course, it means that we now can go into the real weekend for Caterham Motorsport, suitably prepared to settle the championships in, well, Road Sport 270 and 310Rs, because in 7 UK, effectively, as far as we're concerned, we believe that John Burr's done enough provisionally, because I'll give a bit of a sneak peek. He's not on the entry list for this weekend, so I suspect he's doing a Danny Winstanley and probably going to turn up with all his trophies at the circuit and just put his feet up and watch the race and grab the 2-0 scores to be his drop scores and get some points back to confirm it. So it'll be a battle for who else can win a race this season. Any other person done it with Henry Heaton, but if anyone else can, we'll have to wait and see. So, Chris, final word for you, of course, the mastermind behind it all. We had 2 seasons in the books, and season 2 was even better than season 1. I think with what we've got in the background for season 3, that's going to be even better than this season, if that's even possible. So I guess for you, there's the man behind it all. Some final words of thanks and your thoughts on what's been another great season with 2 champions crowned and Steve McMaster in 420Rs and Jaroslav Cerny in Academy. So, final thoughts, boss?
Yeah, overall, we can't do it without our drivers, without our sponsors, and without our viewers. So each and every person helps us along the way with that. And so we're always looking to grow. So if you're a driver looking to do this and want to get involved, please come along to caterhamracer.com. Always welcome to have more viewers and people involved. So just come along, have join in over the winter series, and then into the new year as well. We're not going to stop now, so because we've set something up, so hopefully we'll see that grow and flourish. And we need our drivers, viewers, and sponsors to be able to do that. Thanks, Scott, for all your help along the way, and to really bring to life this caterhamracer.com experience and really make it something that's worthwhile. So thanks to everyone, and 2 very valid champions. Steve McMaster dominant in the 420s and Cerny being consistent all year long and deserving of that crown.
Well, thank you once again, Chris. And also as well, I think you'll agree with this, is that Caterham, if you're watching, you've got our phone numbers. Get in touch anytime you want and we can talk for season 3. As I'm sure I'm sure Chris will have that conversation with Simon and Kurt at some point during the winter. If he hasn't got it lined up already.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Speak to you soon.
So, good stuff. So the final time, then again, I like what Chris said. Thank you ever so much for everyone who supported the both championships, for supporting caterhamracer.com, for all the people who've watched, everyone who's raced, of course, to Chris himself for putting it all together, and for everyone who supported it from start to finish. Just one last message to say, of course, is that as you can see on the screen, caterhamracer.com Academy Championship is supported by Just Add Lightness. Of course, high performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. Go to justaddlightness.co.uk if you've got a Caterham 7 to get those LED lights just a little bit brighter on the Caterham, for especially the darker evenings now that the clocks have gone back an hour or so, which means if you're fancying nighttime driving, it might be a little bit easier to see. So for one last time then, from myself, Scott Woodwiss, and from Chris Hutchinson, thank you ever so much once again for watching Season 2, and stay tuned on the caterhamracer.com website and indeed on Facebook and on YouTube as well, because Season 3 is on the horizon. It shouldn't be too far away. When and where it will be, you have to wait and see and find out. But until then, keep safe, have a great winter, have a great few weeks coming up. It's going to be tough, of course, in the real world, but try not to think about it too much. And we'll see you next time for more action for Season 3 of what will be the caterhamracer.com championships coming up very soon. But from both of us here, thank you once again, and good night.
Good night.